Hi there, and this is the first video I've done in a long time on this YouTube channel. So it's going to be rough, it's going to be improvised, it's going to be kind of a stream of consciousness, but it's a few ideas that I have kicking around about starting adventures. This can apply to D&D, it can apply to really kind of any role-play game, but it's kind of a way of trying to steer us away from this idea of the random meetup. Now, the random meetup's fine, and you can do that, and it's okay, and there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but it's kind of limiting. You know, a random meetup is a ranger, a mage, bard, a thief, and a warrior meet in a tavern, and they just happen to be drinking together and sharing a conversation, and then something just happens to occur. A local merchant says that they've been waylaid in the forests nearby and some valuable treasures have been stolen by goblins and they've gone and hidden down a well with it or something like that. Can you all go and sort that out, please, for a sum of gold? Yeah, we can, but kind of who cares? It might be a sort of stepping stone to a wider quest. You know, you go and find the missing object. It's down a well, and you find out that the goblins are down there, but the goblins are all dead. And there was something about the object that killed them. It's some kind of magical radioactivity. Or you go down there and you find out the merchant wasn't a merchant. He was a strange cultist who was looking for naive fools to go down wells so he can trap them in some kind of strange sort of underdark world. And the PCs have to kind of get out of that. And there's a whole campaign for them to get out of that. It can be sort of like a stepping stone to some more interesting premise. And I think that's the bit. It's the more interesting premise that we are interested in, because adventures are about basing things around interesting premises. Who here, listening, watching, has played an unspeakably boring adventure? 9 times out of 10, it's because the premise behind it wasn't very interesting. That there's a problem, you have to go and resolve it. Okay, great, cool. You know, that is almost a kind of like an encounter within an adventure stretched out to kind of a 2 or 3 hour game level. And it's like, well, I mean, who cares? Who gives a shit? It's just not interesting. It's the premise that we're interested in. And the premise tells us really where the twist in the story is going to come. Is the merchant going to turn out to be an evil cultist? Does the merchant want you to rescue the thing for his own nefarious ends? Does it turn out that the soul of his dying daughter was captured in a gem that's held in this box that the goblins have stolen, and that the evil cultist isn't really all that evil? He's somebody who would do, anyone would do what he's done to try to kind of preserve the life of his child. And therefore, is there some kind of moral dilemma for the players to grapple with later on? And it's that later on bit. It's like kind of crafting the plot of a story, which is essentially what we're doing here. Is the later on bit that's really important. What will happen down the line, and how will the events of the setup influence the payoff? And this is a kind of one of the principles of plot writing if you're writing stories or movies or TV shows or whatever, the idea of the setup payoff. So that's why I'm laboring the point about, the interesting setup. Okay, so let's imagine we're not going to talk about a tavern. Let's pick something at random. Let's imagine that the meeting place is a castle or a fortress. And typically, if it's a castle or a fortress, there's going to be a king or a lord or an overlord or a baron or something like that. Why do the PCs go there in the first place? The ease of the tavern is that that's the place that anyone can go to at any time and sit down at and have a drink, and then something can happen. Okay, cool. But let's not do things on the easy setting. Let's do things on a slightly more complex setting. If you go to a castle, it's probably because you've been invited to go there. You can't just turn up. Kings, lords, barons, they don't like that sort of thing. They will fire arrows from the battlements at you. So in order to get through the portcullis to begin with, across the drawbridge, you have to be invited there. So let's imagine that you are. That your party, I forget what it was now, the ranger and the bard and the thief and the spellcaster and the warrior are all invited by a lord to a castle. Why? Or perhaps all of these people in different ways are kind of in hock to the lord, that they owe him or her. Perhaps some of them are family members, perhaps some are former servants, perhaps some have been freed from captivity by the Lord, perhaps some have some kind of debt to the Lord. And he or she is calling in this debt. Okay, that's a kind of a good premise to begin with. And from there, there we've got a sort of slightly more robust setup. And then from there, we can start moving towards the plot twists. Can you trust this Lord? Has something happened in the time in which you last saw them? Have they become, less reliable? Have they become corrupted? Have they become, do they owe somebody? Have they got a dilemma that they can only rely on brave warriors to solve? Why haven't they got warriors of their own to sort this sort of thing? Well, maybe something's happened within the kingdom. An evil wizard has corrupted the warriors they normally rely on. And how much of this story, this is the kind of the next crucial phase of the setup. How much of this story are the players allowed to know? Perhaps there are parts of the story that they're not allowed to know. Perhaps there are parts of the story that are kept from them. Perhaps they're deceived in some way. Perhaps they are told as much as is convenient for them to know to get them to go off and do the thing that the Lord wants them to do. If we were to say that with this kind of invitation model, it goes from random to invitation, you can supplant that and have it as a monastery. It might be that you have, a priest and a paladin to join the mix of those sorts of characters, and they are summoned by their kind of archpriest, who kind of commands them to do some sort of spiritual or religious duty to rid the realm of evil. It could be part to do with a criminal underworld, that a thief or assassin or kind of thief adjacent sort of characters are called together to be told, you guys, in a kind of Godfather sort of way, you guys, your debt is being called in now. Now here, when we start to make these premises a bit more interesting, that's where the kind of the interaction between the players and the DM or GM or whatever you're playing become more sort of like engaged, that you've got to start thinking about backstories. Well, who owes what to whom and why? And what implications does this have for the character? This can present the players with some interesting role-playing opportunities. It means that perhaps the players can't get to do exactly what they want when they want. It might mean that the Lord says to them, I'd like it if you didn't go around in solving the problem I've set for you. If you didn't go around just killing everybody, that's very bad for business. You have to kind of pick your moments, and try not to kind of do lots of looting as well, please. So there are these kind of potentially inbuilt ways of kind of dealing with the murder hoboing kind of thing, which if you like me, absolutely hate. It can place sort of constraints on the players. Now, this isn't a bad thing. We're kind of educated to think that this is problematic. That surely players should be allowed to do whatever they want because this is their big sandbox and they can behave like toddlers and find all your toys and break them. And actually, no. Why should we do that? Why should that be a thing that benefits everybody and anybody. There is within the universe you create constraints on the player's actions, because there has to be, even if it means that at some point when players behave very badly, that somebody, they have to be, invoke the wrath of some incredibly powerful entity to kind of kick them into charge. The reason why that's a good thing is because with those parameters, with those limitations on player action, that's when players have to actually become inventive, role-playing, and figure out problems instead of killing everything in sight, if assuming they can actually do that. So there is nothing inherently wrong with that at all. So we have firstly the kind of the randomized start, the you meet in a tavern. Then we have the invitation start, which I prefer. You are invited to serve a lord or answer the call of a priest or a god or a magician. And then there's the coercion start. You are not in a situation that that looks advantageous to you. Some DMs I know, like you randomly wake up in a prison, and you have to find ways to get out, and you perhaps don't even know why you're there. And the last thing you remember was you were drinking in a tavern, and you blacked out because someone put something in your drink, and then here you are. That's okay. I mean, that then influences the rest of the narrative of like, well, what is this weird kind of Patrick McGowan prisoner type situation? What is it that's so special about the PCs that people go to the lengths of kind of imprisoning them in this arbitrary and secret way? That in itself is, an interesting premise, I suppose. I like to, with that kind of thing, have something more kind of middle ground. Perhaps the prisoners know why the PCs know why they're prisoners. Perhaps they were all taken prisoners of war. The kingdom has fallen. You were the last sort of survivees, and the evil lord that now controls the kingdom has kept you alive because there's something he wants from you. It might be that you're sent off on a mission to serve the bad guy to begin with, and you've got to work out how you get the better of the bad guy in some kind of way. It might be that you have to use all your skills plus some NPCs within the prison to organize the great prison break. Players will want to very quickly, because they've been hugely disempowered, will want to get back their spellcasting abilities, because they might have been inhibited by this evil drug that they've all drunk. They will want to get back their weapons and items and stuff, and carry on as they were, as quickly as possible. And then you wind up in this kind of battle of wills with the players, where you for some reason might try to kind of limit that. You might want them to go through a series of challenges to get out of the prison. You might want them to be in some way inconvenienced. I mean, that's why anyone wants these things, I don't really know, but this is the kind of the problematic bit about the jailbreak kind of, or the coercion sort of plot line. The players are working at cross purposes with the DM. They're trying as quickly as possible to go from disempowerment to empowerment as rapidly as possible. And the DM has set up this premise where if you allow them to go from disempowerment to empowerment as quickly as possible, then all you did was you set up a kind of like a temporary conceit, which was about how they met up. And then you get on with the real quest, which is a lot of time and effort to go to for basically a brief premise. So I'm always, with the coercion one, I'm always slightly kind of, I have misgivings about that. Option number two, I generally tend to prefer. You could have the two tribes concept, where you have two groups of PCs that come together as one. That it might be that the premises, they've both been set to do something, to find someone, to rescue somebody, to steal something, by two different rival lords or two different rival kind of dispatcher characters. And then they meet up and hopefully work out that their interests are best served together. Or you have the kind of the enigma, where you start the game where the players have all been sent to solve some sort of problem, some sort of riddle, some sort of conundrum, and they meet halfway through that. And so you might start them, the opening scene isn't a tavern, it's a room in a dungeon, and you say that you all emerge through different doors into this room in a dungeon where there's this puzzle that you have to solve. You're all a bit surprised to see one another, but you very quickly realize that you're not a danger to one another, and you sense that you have a common interest. And you realize that there are lots of scary monsters in the dungeon, and it would be better for you all to cooperate in order to figure out the puzzle and get out of there. And then as you figure out the puzzle, you might learn about the people who sent you. We're coming back to this idea of the kind of the unreliable master, the betrayer, that kind of thing. Or you might learn something more sinister about the dungeon you're in, and the thing that the problem that you were sent to solve might have a kind of like a hidden meaning behind it. It might be that it equips somebody with a powerful world-changing spell, and all of a sudden you've got this scary, dangerous thing that cannot fall into the hands of the people who actually sent you to solve the problem. So that's another one there. So there are loads of different starter premises. Use the tavern by all means. It's more than adequate. I mean, sometimes I like to supplant the tavern with just like a meeting point. That there are places in the wilderness that people meet up when they want that, because they know other humans will be there. You turn up to this clearing and sit around for a couple of days because it's relatively safe and relatively well defended. And when you want to travel across the rest of the mountains, a few days later, probably some people who you can travel with will turn up because they're doing the same thing. And away you go. And that's a kind of a slightly different version, and it's kind of helpful if you're situating the adventure in the middle of a wilderness. So I'm going to pause there, and I'll talk more about sort of adventure structure in the next few videos. But I hope there's a kind of that was helpful in terms of looking at startings and beginnings and just making that a bit more interesting. But anyway, give your comments in the little thingy down below. I'd love to know what you think, and because that's where the really interesting conversations begin. And inevitably there'll be people saying, no, you're wrong, total nonsense. Cool, great, cool, love all that. And remember to like, share, follow, and do all that kind of stuff. And there you can find us for more general handy D&D stuff and other RPG stuff at enterthearkverse.com. And yeah, cool, join the fun.